Thank you so much for joining this second webinar session on how to get on board inclusive skating. And the main focus of today's session is going to be the safety course. And I'm actually going to take you through the whole of the safety course. I don't think we're going to get through it all today because it's going to take longer than an hour. And I'll give you some like background information as we're sort of like explaining the main policies for inclusive skating. So what I'm going to do straight away is I'm actually going to share my screen. So if you just give me a wee second, I've got the page already. Right, so can you actually see that? Right, now this web page is actually the online learning platform. And so if you can actually see it down the, can you see up at the top where my little arrow is? inclusiveskating.moodle.tituslearning.com. That is the inclusive skating learning platform. In addition to this safety course, which is what is going to be the main meat of today, there's also a huge other range of courses. I'm just going to click on that. Can you see all those courses? Anyone who joins inclusive skating, you'll also receive an online welcome to this separate learning platform, and it gives you access to all of these courses. These are coaching courses for everyone, and there's also the inclusive skating badge program, and it includes on ice, off ice, and it includes all the different levels. Over the next couple of weeks, I'm going to take you through the badge program as well. And if we've got time, we'll do some of the other resources that you've got access to. But today, we're going to do this accredited advisor course because this is the most important thing that I want you all to have a knowledge and understanding about. If anyone is finding that they've not got access to this or they're struggling to do it, one of the sessions will also cover how we actually get people onboarded and you get access to this Titus Learning. Everyone that's on this course I know is a user on the platform, and if you've forgotten your password, just use the forgotten password function. So you can actually Google search that, it'll take you through to it. And when you try to log in, if you can't remember your password, just say forgotten password and it will send it to your email. The email will always be the email that you've got registered on the Inclusive Skating Sport 80 platform, because we use the same email for everything. And so that coordinates the name that is registered on the platform with the email, and you've always got access to it. But the passwords will always be what you choose. We will have set up a default one when we originally set this up. But if you've not accessed it or you've forgotten it, you just use a forgotten password and the system will send you a new password, which will last for about an hour. So if you haven't used it before, do log on and you'll be able to do it. And it will be important because once we've finished doing this course, there's a little exam that you can take at the end that gives you a little certificate that proves that you've actually taken the course. Okay, so I will be hoping that by the end of the couple of weeks that it takes us to go through the course, that you will all have taken the opportunity to take the little exam at the end, and that you will get the little certificate. It's an important certificate actually, because it shows that you've actually really understood everything that's involved in the course. I'm just trying to make sure it's not that difficult. All of you should be able to do it. Okay. Okay. So let's have a look. So the objectives of the course. What is the aim of this course? By completing this programme, anyone wanting to improve safety during inclusive skating activities should be able to do the following. They should be able to recall the main safety responsibilities that volunteer skaters and associated personnel have. You should be able to competently provide basic safety advice. You should be able to identify volunteers, skaters or associated personnel who may need advice. And you can be the point of contact for safety matters in your sporting environment. And it's a wonderful thing to be able to do, because it then means that we're more confident about setting up additional inclusive skating activities, because if everyone's got an understanding of safety, then safety for everyone is promoted. When you have completed this course, you can attain a certificate and accreditation as an inclusive skating accredited safety advisor. And we actually keep a register of all the inclusive skating advisors on the inclusive skating register, which is on the website. Currently, we've got 46 inclusive skating safety advisors across the UK and across the world. We've already got someone from Australia, and Perhaps Victoria might be the second or the third person who might qualify in Australia. And I'm hoping that all of you will qualify as well. Okay, by completing and passing this course and obtaining the certificate, you will obtain course credits in your Inclusive Skating Volunteer Activities Supporter Training Programme. And this is going to be building up to a full-blown relevant coaching qualification. And we are obtaining recognition for this through CIMSPA and also through the SQA so that it becomes a validated qualification. If you're new to e-learning, here are some top tips for e-learning. And bearing in mind that this is the same for all the courses that are on the Inclusive Skating platform. Take the assessment when you know you'll be able to complete it undisturbed. So if you've got children running around, it's probably not a good idea. Do try to have a little bit of space. Follow the instructions at the bottom of each screen to navigate through the course. Keep a notepad to hand and jot down any notes or questions you can have. And if you experience any technical problems, please contact inclusiveskating.event@gmail.com or use the support function on the Inclusive Skating membership platform. And obviously, because you're doing the course here with me today, then you can just ask me questions as we're going along. So, inclusive skating, what's it all about? We just click on that little box and it tells us, and it opens up more information. All skaters deserve to participate in a welcoming environment that meets their needs. Our mission with your help is to ensure that all those who participate in the sport of inclusive skating know how to keep the environment safe and welcoming. Inclusive Skating is a world-recognised charity that has created a format to include all skaters with challenges and additional needs. We work with many national governing bodies, international sporting bodies, and the wider sporting community to help to meet those needs and achieve inclusion for all skaters. We have many functions and operate across all forms of skating. So that's ice, inline, and rollers. Is there a problem? Yes, of course there is. Inclusion in skating is challenging. Skating can be risky even for the most able. However, the ease of movement from skating-based activities can be tremendous fun and brings lots of joy for skaters with challenges. Skaters who are motivated to participate, and with that comes all the health and well-being benefits that sport provides. You can visit the Inclusive Skating website for further information on how the charity protects inclusive skaters and promotes inclusion in all forms of skating. So never ever assume that people can't participate, always assume that they can. Okay, it's really important that we achieve inclusion for all. Okay, so what will it take to become an accredited inclusive skating safety advisor? To become an accredited inclusive skating advisor, you need to do the following things. Be a registered volunteer on the Inclusive Skating platform, which you all are. Complete this e-learning programme. It should take about 75 minutes. So that's why I've said we're not going to complete it today. We'll only complete probably about half of it today. Read the Inclusive Skating Safety Policy. That should take about 1 hour. And it's really important that you do that because it supplements everything that we've got in here. Basically, everything that is stated in this safety course is in the safety policy. So if you're ever wanting to have a note of what was on that module on the safety course, you can actually check it out in the safety policy. Okay. Complete and pass a series of short assessments. These assessments have an error margin of 1 incorrect question per assessment. Now, it's important to bear in mind that inclusive skating has got people who are volunteers within our sport are usually very highly creative people. And with creativity comes a very high proportion of people who've got dyslexia. So I want to share with you the possibility that people who are taking the course or who may want to take the course may have dyslexia. So that's why I provide this course. Apart from the fact that it's great fun, it also means that we're able to reach more people. So if you know of anyone that has got dyslexia and feels that there is a barrier to their participation and becoming a volunteer and taking the safety course because they find things like this difficult, tell them that we also provide this sort of support activity, and we also provide a support activity for them to take the course as well. So if they need any help with, for example, reading the questions to be able to take them, clicking on the links because of word blindness or such like, or physical disability that they can't actually click on the links, just let us know and we will help them through taking the course. Absolutely everyone should be able to take this course no matter what the challenge or the additional need. Okay. Print out your certificate when you have taken the course as evidence of successful completion. And because you're doing it on the platform will automatically send it out to you with your name on it. And it's also got a log of the specific certificate so that it can always be double checked so that no one else can copy the certificates. The certificates are all logged through a secure system. Okay, so if there's any challenge to it. Agree to share your achievement with the inclusive skating community. And as I said, we keep a register of the people that have passed the course so that people know that you've actually taken the course. To remain accredited, you should demonstrate continuing competence, and you should take an online assessment as and when necessary. And usually you would expect this to be at 3-year intervals as a minimum. And that's part of our general philosophy when it comes to coaching competence. And that's in line with global standards nowadays with how to become a good coach and an excellent coach. And that is that you examine on a critical basis your own competence and you identify areas where you think you've got strengths and weaknesses. And if you've got weaknesses, then you look to improve upon them. And there are things like general safety standards where everyone just needs to be able to demonstrate competence and to refresh their knowledge on a continuing basis. Even I take this course on a regular basis. And obviously for me, it's a bit easier because very often I'm doing the course in this way, but never assume that you know everything. It's always a good idea to check your knowledge and also to review and, and critically review your own competence. You should keep a record of all training and certificates on your Inclusive Skating Volunteer Membership platform. So once you've taken this course, if you go to the Sport 80 platform, you'll actually see that there's a place where you can upload PDFs, and we invite you to keep a copy of all the certificates for any course that you do on the Inclusive Skating platform and register that certificate, because it provides a very good way of you actually keeping a record of your own courses and your own qualifications. Try to keep a backup copy yourself as well, because it's amazing how quickly you can actually lose these things. But do always try to keep it on our Sport 80 platform as well. To ensure that all volunteer skaters and associated personnel are aware of inclusive skating policies, there are a series of videos from our Skate for All funded project that supplement this course. These videos and resources have been funded by the National Lottery Community Fund People's Project, and this follows a successful vote for the Skate for All project by the public. Find out more by visiting the Inclusive Skating website and the YouTube channel. So if you go to our YouTube channel and you want to share any of the videos that you're seeing on this course, they're actually publicly available on the YouTube channel. And as I said, they were funded by the People's Project. We actually won £50,000 to produce these videos. And there's some of that money that is still available for ongoing support. So for example, people that are potentially coaches in the UK, such as Bronwyn, if you start new inclusive skaters, we've got some money within the People's Project to be able to fund you, making sure that they get a safe start, that they get registered on the platform, and that they have about 1 hour of your coaching time to make sure that that is all done and that they're introduced to inclusive skating safely. Okay. So let's have a look at the overview of the safety policies. This is where it starts to get interesting, right? So module 1, this is all about the inclusive skating policies and the safe environment that inclusive skaters should have. The learning outcomes. By the end of this module, you should be able to promote knowledge of inclusive skating policies and where they originate, recognise the importance of these policies for safety, understand the relationship between inclusive skating policies and the policies of other NGBs and organisations that inclusive skating is affiliated to and associated with, reinforce the operation of these policies during all skating activities, recognise safety hazards and recognise who has responsibility for safety, and advise others on the importance of these policies for inclusive skating events and activities. So let's go through. This is an overview first of all. So before we go into the details of them, let's actually find out what the key policies are. So the key inclusive skating policies are, number 1, application of the highest standards. Now, inclusive skating is affiliated and cooperates with many organisations, and all of these organisations have health and safety and safeguarding policies, just like the inclusive skating safety policy. We adopt them all, and they are deemed automatically included within our inclusive skating rules. In the event of a conflict between any standard or guidelines, the higher standard automatically applies. We default to the highest standard. Inclusive skating seeks to cooperate with all relevant sporting organisations to facilitate the development of the highest possible standards for the benefit of the inclusive skating community. So what does that mean in practice? People often turn around and say to me, oh, the inclusive skating policies, they're different from British Ice Skating or the Australian Ice Skating Association, so therefore they've got to be less good. If there's any part of their policies, because we are affiliated with them and we're affiliated with the ISU, or our format is, we're not affiliated to the ISU, we're affiliated to British Ice Skating, but we're recognised by the ISU. If there's any part of anyone's policies that are actually better than ours, they automatically get included. And that includes things like UK Active, no matter what organisation it is, Scottish Sports Association, Northern Ireland Sports Forum, Sport and Recreation Alliance. If they've got any policy that's better than ours, we automatically incorporate it. So if there was ever any conflict, then that's what would apply. And it's very easy for us to implement that because within the Inclusive Skating Code of Conduct for Officials, we've got principles, and the principles require us to adopt the highest standards, and they include this default provision. So no one can ever say that the inclusive skating standards are lower than anyone else, because we will always default to the highest standard. And we make everyone that becomes an inclusive skating volunteer aware of that. We really do expect the highest standards that are possible. And I'm delighted to say that we've got amazing volunteers and people that operate within the organisation that do actually achieve these really high standards, and they certainly do apply. So the second key policy is the inclusive skating health and safety policies and individual risk assessment. Inclusive skating regards the health, safety and well-being of skaters in the community as of the utmost importance. These guidelines are not exhaustive, and every person must take an individual assessment of the risks applicable to their particular circumstances. So I'll give you an example. I attended a course once down with one of the other ice rinks, and there were coaches taking the course. And one of them laughed and joked about, we were doing an activity where everyone was going to the centre of the ice, and they recounted a story whereby they had been teaching a beginner group of skaters, and this person said to them, oh, are we at the centre of the ice yet? And the woman turned around to the skater and said, well, yeah, but why are you asking? And she said, oh, it's just because I'm blind. So this person had been taken to the centre of the ice rink by the coach, and the coach at no point in time knew that the person was blind and visually impaired. Now, that just would not happen with inclusive skating, because we would have required them to have done the registration on the inclusive skating platform and an individual risk assessment to ascertain whether or not the person had any additional needs. So although it may be regarded as a barrier that you're actually requiring individual risk assessments, it is hugely important to safety that you actually ascertain what the individual risks are. And that is quite a challenge for everyone involved, because very often the parents and the carers will find it very difficult to impart information. So we require the volunteers to be very sensitive to that. But nonetheless, they need to be able to get that information. It's really important that you ascertain all the risks that are involved for that individual, and that you put in place safety measures. For example, for the VI person, they definitely needed a guide, and they definitely needed someone to tell them when they'd got to the middle of the ice rink. Right. What's the next safety policy that's really important? And I'm sure this is one that is very dear to Grant and Lucy's heart, because it's the key to Grant's participation in our events. And he might want to share something in relation to it. Okay, so it's the accreditation policy. Inclusive skating at no time seeks to take over the care of the inclusive skater. The parents and the carers of the skater retain their care responsibilities for the inclusive skater at all times. And this is implemented through the accreditation policy. So parents and carers retain their access and care responsibilities at all times. During events and activities, all parents and carers are therefore given accreditation to remain with the skater or in close proximity to the skater at all times. By contrast, in many non-inclusive skating events, parents, carers and associated parents are discouraged from supporting the care of the skater. In some cases, they may even be denied access. So if you think back to your participation in many able-bodied skating events, what you'll remember is that you were down at the rink side with your coach and that your parent or your carers were not allowed anywhere near the rink side. They were banished to the seats or whatever, but they certainly weren't allowed and given accreditation down the rink side. That's not the case with inclusive skating. With inclusive skating, the parents and the carers retain care, and the only time that there may actually be a time when the parent or carer may not be immediately present is if the skater is skating independently on the ice itself and doesn't want or need them to be there. Anyone that does need to be there at rinkside will be allowed access, and we give accreditation. So you will find that at all events that there will be accreditation passes that are really important to the functioning of inclusive skating events, and it's got huge implications for the way that events are run. And I'll give you a couple of examples of that. When you go to a Special Olympics event, which you think, oh, well, that's a disability event, that's got to be the same as inclusive skating when they're running events. No, it's not. They do not have an accreditation policy. When they're running Special Olympics events, they do not allow the parents and the carers to be at the rink side or at the venue side. The parents and carers will have a separate system in operation for them. And when you go to a Special Olympics event, what will happen is you will go as a team and the coaches will look after the skaters, and the parents and carers will usually be in a completely separate hotel. That is not the way that we do it within inclusive skating. If you're taking part in an inclusive skating event, no matter where it's taking place in the world, you will stay with your parents and your carers, and they will continue to look after you. So, for example, in the case of Grant came and took part in our Scottish Inclusive Skating Championships, didn't he? And Grant had his mum and his parents and the family members, Lucy, there, all making sure that he was looked after. And it's extremely important because there may be issues in relation to feeding and all these other issues that other people may not be able to do as well as the parents and the carers. They know and they understand the skater, and they are best placed to look after the skater. Now, the reason why that got implemented was back in 2012 when I was setting up the first competition. I needed to ensure that there was maximum safety because we didn't know all the risks. We'd never run competitions for those with disability. So to maximise safety, we kept the parents and carers there. And it was such a success. And it was a success in many ways. It created a complete community for the people that are involved in inclusive skating. So almost by trying to ensure the safety for everyone right at the very beginning, that policy has stood the test of time, and it's key to the success of it. And it's also resulted in huge implications when it comes to safeguarding. So I'll give you another example. If you were to go to the World Figure Skating Championships, what you will usually find is that the skaters will be kept in one hotel with potentially the team manager and maybe one doctor, slash physiotherapist, who'll be staying in the same hotel as them. You'll have another hotel which will be for the officials and the people that are the judges and the ISU members, for example. And then you'll have another hotel which will be for the press and the parents and the carers. And they will all be completely separate. And the parents and carers will not be in the same hotel. Now, if you're dealing with a safeguarding issue, you can see that immediately you've got these skaters that are incredibly vulnerable because they're then isolated from their parents and their carers. And again, that is not the way that we do it within inclusive skating. We keep the parents and the carers there looking after the inclusive skater directly. We don't take responsibility for their hotels. We may support them finding hotels. We may go out as a team together, but we will organise and manage the team as a complete team so that you will remain with your parents and your carers at all times. And as a result, we have great fun when we go to events, but it does result in there being many more people taking part in the event, and it's got a great sort of family and community feel about the whole thing. And it's that accreditation policy that makes it all happen. So it's extremely important that you're aware of that policy, because I want you to protect that policy so that even after I've gone and I'm no longer running inclusive skating, I want you to protect that policy for the safety and the safeguarding of the future community of inclusive skaters. The next policy that is really important is the facilitation policy. Inclusive skating seeks to support the inclusion of all skaters, and the inclusive skating facilitation policy gives effect to this policy. All necessary assistance that is practicable to enable inclusion of the skater in the event and/or activity is permitted. So in other words, if we can practically provide that facilitation and support, then the skater gets the support that is required. Now, that is not the same in other organisations. So for example, if you want to not have any facilitation and you're taking part in a skating competition, then you take part with, for example, British Ice Skating and the able-bodied, because they've got no systems to provide facilitation as such. If you are taking part in Special Olympics, you're not allowed to have a facilitator on the ice. You have to be able to take part in the event as an independent person. So there are key, huge differences in the number of skaters who've got access to the event within inclusive skating, because we allow all forms of facilitation. And that includes even for those with an intellectual challenge. So you don't have to be independent to be able to take part in an inclusive skating event. If you need a little bit of help, you get it, and you get it through the facilitation policy. Facilitation is decided through the classification process. So it's important that you understand that it's a classification system and process that gives access to it. And the inclusive skating registration platform provides a record of all of that facilitation and what we've put in place for the individual. And so that's why it's really important that going forward, that even though we may be setting up relationships with other organisations, every single inclusive skater has got access to the registration platform and is recorded individually on the system, because that's where the classification will exist and that's where the record of the information is kept. Okay, and so I'm hoping that in the future that many of you will actually help other inclusive skaters to register on the platform, because it's quite a challenge for everyone to do, and that you will support them in making sure that they seek facilitation where they need it. It's more important for people to be included within the activity through facilitation than not to take part at all. And many people are often discouraged from taking part in activities because they need a bit of extra help. We need to change that culture so that people come forward, get a bit of help, and that they're able to get fit and active and healthy and enjoy being part of the community. Okay. Now, the next policy that is extremely important is the welcome policy. And you think, well, why is that so important? Is because coming into a facility or coming into an activity right at the beginning is the hardest thing for anyone to do. If you just think about someone that has been subject to discrimination, or someone that's from an ethnic minority group, for example, very often going into an environment can be very, very daunting. So what we try to ensure is that people are aware that we've actually got a need for a welcome policy. So we seek to ensure that there's a designated person to meet and greet new skaters and manage the induction process. So if any of you get involved in setting up inclusive skating activities or events, that person who is actually the designated meet and greet person could be the most important person to provide inclusion, because they're the person that's going to help the person in the door. Events and activities should have a clearly signposted registration desk for skaters and parents and carers, and skaters and associated persons are given support to enter the event and access the systems. So I can't emphasise enough just how important that welcome policy is to achieving inclusion. Now, what is the inclusion policy? Because I've actually got that down as a separate policy. Inclusive skating includes the whole family and the carers too. If there is one member of a family or a group with a challenge, then the whole family and group can participate together. And this helps the parents and carers to manage their care responsibilities appropriately. What you find when you're taking part within inclusive skating activities is if you've got one person who's a family member who's got an additional need or challenge, then the whole family can find it difficult to take part in sport. So the policy with inclusive skating is that you should include the whole family. So for example, if we've got people taking part in a competition, then the siblings can take part in the competition too. And they would go, if they had no additional needs, then they would go into the unclassified section, but they are welcome to take part in the event. We're not wanting to take over British Ice Skating or the ISU. We're not there to provide events and activities for people that are able-bodied. If they're really wanting to compete and take part in the Olympics, then they go off to the ISU to be able to do that. But if they're wanting to take part alongside their sibling, or their mum or their dad, or whoever it is that has actually got the additional need, then we welcome them to do so. And so we are very happy for people skating in our events and also skating in other events organised by other associations. We're totally accepting of that. The important thing for us is that if they've got a need to be included in our events, then they can do so, and we welcome them through that unclassified unified system to make sure that there are events that are realistic and that match their ability levels. We've got a conduct policy as well, which is one of the key policies for inclusive skating, and I think I mentioned it a short time ago. The Inclusive Skating Code of Conduct applies to all participants at all times. As more people are given access to the venue, they must adopt the highest possible standards of conduct and behaviour at all times. So, for example, able-bodied family members, carers should respect the needs of the whole community and should modify their behaviour to accommodate the needs of all the inclusive skaters. So, for example, although we say to the siblings and the family members, you're welcome to come on the ice, that doesn't mean that they run riot and they create a lot of noise and that they scare all the inclusive skaters off the ice. They've got to modify the behaviour and behave appropriately. So if they're wanting access to the ice and our activities, then they've just got to calm down a bit and just make sure that they're providing a nice, quiet, supportive environment and that they behave themselves. We welcome, but we want everyone to be supportive because we're seeking to provide a calm, quiet, supportive and welcoming environment for everyone at all times. Inclusive skating is a volunteer-led activity. Therefore, all participants must ensure that they respect the needs of all the participants, and that includes the volunteers. The volunteers are there to support activities and are not expected to be substitute carers. Now, I know that can be really quite hard because sometimes, when you've got an additional need and you've been looking after someone, you might want to dump the skater and head off for a coffee. Not happening. We don't allow that. You're allowed to stay and you could even take part in the activity, but you're not allowed to just drop the skater and then go off and have a coffee, in the cafeteria up the stairs. You've actually got to remain there at all times. And you've also got to support the volunteers in their activities. The volunteers are not there to take, for example, the skater to the toilet or to do anything else. They're there to help you in doing the skating activities and the development of the skater. So it's really important that you don't expect the volunteers to take on that responsibility. We're not expecting the volunteers to do that. And we also want to make sure that anyone who's involved with inclusive skating treats the volunteers with the utmost respect because they are really important to the continuation of all activities that are involved with inclusive skating. Inclusive skating believes in a positive experience for all participants and also follows the I Coach Kids pledge and philosophy. And we encourage all participants to follow this pledge and to take the free courses that are available. And we provide them on the website. And these will supplement additional coaching courses that are going to become available with inclusive skating on an ongoing basis. I don't know. Right, okay. So we've done that one. We've done this one yet? Done this one yet? All right, this is where the policy started. Right, let me just take you through this. I think I must have missed this one out. Where the safety policy started and my future role. When inclusive skating tested the competition format in 2012 at Dumfries, there was little knowledge about the potential risks and what was needed in the safety policy. So in 2012, several novel policies for ice skating events were put in place to minimise risks, and this resulted in the 2012 event being very successful and very safe. As many more events have been held, confidence has grown in the system, so participation has widened over the years, and there's now inclusion for every challenge. The policies put in place, have we done this already? No? I've done this so often, just slightly, I'm beginning to think I'm repeating myself. The policies put in place in 2012 have stood the test of time and have supported the widening of participation and inclusion. The safety policies have been refined, but they are substantially the same and they define all inclusive skating events. If the skating competition event or activity does not follow these safety policies, then it's not a true inclusive skating event. With the growing popularity of inclusive skating across the world, many people will seek to use the inclusive skating name and or apply some of the format. However, the application of these safety policies will identify the true inclusive skating events. So your role as an inclusive skating advisor is to provide advice and support to inclusive skaters, associated persons and the inclusive skating community, and to help them meet their safety responsibilities and follow the inclusive skating policies. We want you to help to raise awareness of safe practices in your environment and encourage others to take the Inclusive Skating Safety Advisor course. Signpost coaches and volunteers, inclusive skaters, parents, carers and associated persons to the dedicated sections of the Inclusive Skating website to help to keep them informed. Support parents and carers to understand the safety policies that apply to inclusive skating activities. So, what are the inclusive skating safety responsibilities and how are these policies applied? The modules in this programme will cover the answers to these questions and many important themes. And guess who we've got as a photo on this? Do you want to give a wave? Grant and Lucy. Wonderful. Right, let me just shut that down. Right, okay, so let me just I missed this one out. So these are the modules. Module 1, 2, 3, 4, balance aids, 5, 6 and 7. Okay. This programme concludes with a summary of the main messages from the programme. Will reinforce your role as an advisor and information on the next steps which an accredited advisor can take. This will then be followed by your assessment, and the assessment contains 28 questions and is marked at the end after you've completed all the questions. The assessment can be retaken as many times as you wish, and the pass mark is 85%, so you don't have to get everything correct. Someone has, but not many, okay? So any sort of pass is absolutely acceptable. Some of the questions are quite difficult because they're quite closely drafted, so it's very easy to get 1 or 2 wrong. Once you're satisfied with your score, you can press the finish at the bottom of the page, and you have to press finish. You've actually got to submit it, and you'll be issued with your certificate. So here's the introductory safety video to get you started.
It's a very safe environment. We make sure that all the parents are always there, carers, because these are kids, they're unpredictable, and their parents know them best.
If an athlete is poorly, if they're taking medication, if they're having an off day, perhaps they have a fall on the ice, the people that they love, the people that they're used to being with are right there with them.
Safety is really important in inclusive skating because you are dealing with skaters who have got some challenges. When you have a disability, you're in a world that isn't made for you. You have to fit into this world that doesn't work for you. Whereas inclusive skating, if something doesn't work for you, they will try their best to change things or put things in place to make it work and make you feel welcome.
Now, we've only got 15 minutes left of today's session, right? I'm hoping that we get through some of these policies here because that's what I've already kind of covered, potentially up to here. I'm not going to get started with module 2 because that's much more specific things about getting ready on the ice, but if we can cover all the basic policies, that would be super. So let's have a look at the accreditation policy. And guess what? We've got another video, so I'm going to have to take the mic out again. So let's take the mic out. There we are. Hopefully we'll be able to watch it.
Inclusive skating lets parents and carers know every step of the way what's needed, so it's just reassurance that people's needs are being looked after and taken into account.
It's massively important that parents are right there with the skating. That's right in the heart of inclusive skating. We want the athletes to feel like they're in their comfort zone. They can go out there and they can perform and do what they always do with the people they do that with.
We are their advocates. They can't speak for themselves sometimes, and they struggle to express themselves, I think it's right that parents should be allowed to be involved.
With inclusive skating, having the environment that not only includes the skaters but makes them feel safe, and we're having their parents there, they're able to be supported not just by me as a coach, but by someone who can comfort them when things go wrong and support them when things go right as well.
I think organisations like Inclusive Skating need the support of active parents. The funding's not there for these kind of organisations, so there's a lot of fundraising. So it's very important to find like-minded people that can get involved with the charity. There's so much more to do that can be done.
Yeah. That was taken at one of our events down at Lammas. That was the Inclusive Skating for Dreams event down in Nottinghamshire, and that's a really important event. Okay, so the parents and the carers of the skater retain their care responsibilities for the inclusive skater at all times. And at events and practice sessions, that's implemented through the accreditation policy. So parents and carers retain their access and care responsibilities at all times. During events and activities, all parents and carers are therefore given accreditation to remain with the skater or in close proximity to the skater at all times. Okay, so by contrast, in many non-inclusive skating events, parents, carers and associated persons are discouraged from supporting the care of this skater. In some cases, they may even be denied access. Inclusive skating at no time seeks to take over the care of the inclusive skater. So if the event or activity is denying the parent or carer access to the rink, then they're not following the accreditation policy. So you can pull them up on it. And if you've got problems trying to get people to, for example, stay within the rink, and this happens a lot with coaches, you know, someone will turn up, you know, like they've got a group of skaters coming in from, you know, like a local facility, and you've got maybe 3 or 4 kids in care, and they think they can just drop and go. You can't. They've got to stay. If it's an inclusive skating activity, they've got to stay. And so the coaches, once they really start to get to grips with how important and how helpful this is for everyone, they will then seek to make sure that that policy continues. So the facilitation policy, let's go into that in a bit more detail. So inclusive skating seeks to support the inclusion of all skaters, and the inclusive skating facilitation policy gives effect to this policy. So as I said, all necessary assistance that is practicable to enable inclusion of the skater in the event and or activity is permitted. So facilitation to meet the skater's needs can take many forms and is approved during classification for competition purposes. So the Inclusive Skating Classification Handbook, 4th edition, which is actually just been updated, it's now the 5th edition, provides examples. And the Technical Handbook provides the competition rules that authorise the use of facilitation in competition. So we don't allow people just to come in and just turn up and just get on the ice just because they feel like it. It's actually got to be approved through a process. So you've got to justify it. Because obviously if you're, for example, running the warm-up groups and the competition, you need to know how many people you've got on the ice, because you have to manage the numbers accordingly. So it's not possible to have people just turn up and say, oh, well, you know, I'm the facilitator, I'm allowed on. For competition purposes, it's got to go through classification. So yes, it will be allowed, but it's got to be approved in advance. And if you have a look at the competitions, you'll have a look that when I'm setting up the warm-up groups, I will know exactly who is actually on the ice and the number of people specified to make sure that there's enough room for everyone to operate safely at the event. So inclusive skating will try to make it possible for every skater to skate their best and will enable adjustments that are needed because of a medical condition. Here are just some examples. Shortness of breath. The skater can stop for a brief period between compulsory elements or during a longer free skate. The skater may also be allowed to skate a reduced programme, and the number of technical elements will be adjusted accordingly. So for example, that could be really helpful if you've got someone that's got chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, or they've got a heart condition. We can actually reduce the length of the programme. And the world rankings will always be done in relation to a 1-minute programme. So even if you go up to, for example, a higher level, you're skating at level 6, but you've got, for example, a heart condition and you can only do a 1-minute programme, then, for example, we may reduce the number of elements and your 1-minute score could actually just be the 1 minute that you're allowed to skate. And we have had skaters in the past that have been allowed to do that. We've also allowed people with heart conditions to split the programme in 2, so that they've done one part of the programme and then they took a rest and then they did the second part of the programme. And that's perfectly fine. You wouldn't be allowed to do that in an able-bodied competition, but that can and will be built into an inclusive skating event if you need it. Total or partial blindness. A facilitator is allowed on the ice during warm-up and whilst the skater is performing. what we actually find is that it's actually more important to have the facilitators for vision on the ice during practice and warm-up. And that's why the assessment of the visual impairment will actually take into account the way that the skater is practicing. If you're on a competition event and you've got the ice all to yourself, then very often you'll have the programme memorised. And it's actually fairly straightforward. The difficulty in actual fact is training the programme to be able to do the programme at all in the first place if you're having to share the ice with other skaters. So that's why the partial blindness and the assessment for classification will take on board whether or not you need facilitation, and importantly, whether or not you need facilitation in practice. Okay. Severe intellectual impairment. A facilitator may be allowed on the ice during the warm-up to remind the skater of the compulsory elements, and they may also just because the person can't remember it. And there are skaters skating globally who just cannot remember more than one or two elements, so they need to be continually prompted to remember the next element. In that sort of situation, inclusive skating would allow the facilitator to do the reminding process. Whereas, for example, Special Olympics, you wouldn't be allowed to have that. You would need to remember the whole programme independently. Inclusive skating, we're different. We allow facilitation and we allow the facilitator to do the reminding. Okay. We try to get people to keep the facilitation to the minimum that is necessary because everyone likes doing it themselves. But if they need it, they get it. So balance, again, we allow the use of a harness of a frame. And we've now developed events that go through tier 1, tier 2 and tier 3 because the skaters that we started off that were using balances and harnesses have got better and they've improved. So the technical level of difficulty for those that are doing harnesses and frames has actually increased quite considerably from when we started running these events 4 or 5 years ago. Diabetes, people that have got difficulties managing their sugar levels, they might be allowed to skate after the warm-up or as necessary. And we've had skaters who have maybe taken a dip just before or during or after their skating. And in that situation, we would allow them a break. We might even transfer them into the next warm-up group if it was necessary for them to have some time. And that would also be the case for people that have got an episodic loss of consciousness, such as an epileptic fit. If they need recovery time, then we would make an adjustment for them. One of the things that we've done a lot with skaters like that are really highly volatile is that we actually started allowing them to provide a video just in case something happened and they couldn't take part in the event. And that's how the video and the virtual system developed out of. And again, it includes people that have got difficulty managing their conditions to be able to take part. Inclusive skating is keen to find out what adjustments are helpful to skaters. So if you have found something that helps you, please tell us and we will be happy to consider this as long as it's reasonable for the particular type of disability. So it's one of the reasons why we've got different events. So for example, for Grant and Lucy, the synchro events resulted from the fact that Grant and Lucy turned up at the rink and I thought, hold on a second, there's got to be something for them too. So we created the synchro duets with wheelchairs to make sure that Grant and Lucy had something to take part in. So we've got what I call an open door policy. Yeah, exactly, Grant. It's great. We've got an open door policy. Walk in the door, and if we find that you need some sort of adjustment or we need to create a new event or do something to be able to provide your inclusion, we'll do it. Okay. Now, I think I've already said this, but I'll just repeat it. Facilitators are only allowed on the ice if they've been approved during classification. We also wish inclusive skaters to achieve independence where this is possible. Additional skaters on the ice also has safety implications. So the additional skaters required for facilitation purposes may require a reduction in the number of competitors on the ice during warm-ups and practice sessions. And there are also additional requirements for the other skaters on the ice too. They may have to leave more time and space to accommodate the needs of the skater and their facilitator. So that's covered in the safety policy too. So please do bear in mind, don't just turn up. If you need to be a facilitator for your particular skater, make sure that they've gone through classification and you've got it approved. We'll be happy to do it because we'll just make sure that we build that into the systems. Please note that Special Olympics events do not allow facilitation on the ice. So please ensure that the skater is safe when they're skating independently before you enter Special Olympics events. Inclusive skating, we host Special Olympics events frequently. And sometimes people have turned around to me and said, oh, but you've changed the rules. I haven't. if you're going to go to a Special Olympics event, it's not my rules that are applying, it's the Special Olympics rules. So if you're seeking to obtain qualification and selection for a Special Olympics event, make sure that the skater knows that they're going to have to be independent. They're not going to be able to do something like this. That's me guiding Juliana on the ice during a practice session. Okay, that's allowed because it's facilitation for VI, but it wouldn't be allowed at other events. Okay. Right. Inclusion policy, let's have a look at that. Oh, we've got a nice video, so we're going to have to take out the mic to make sure that it's working. Let's.
Inclusive skating has made a big difference in my life. As a skater, I wasn't able to compete alongside my friends, so I was feeling quite left out of all their competition preparations. And now it's given me the ability to sort of join in with that buzz and to achieve things on my own merit and to share that with my friends. And that's a massive thing for me.
She's awesome, isn't she? She's also one of our registered safety advisors, which is excellent. So event organisers and volunteer activities supporters should seek to adapt the systems and processes to achieve inclusion for all whenever this is reasonably practicable. So that means that if you're setting up a session or you're the coach, then you have to have a dialogue and a conversation with the individuals to see what it is that they need. It's important that inclusive skating includes skaters with any form of challenge, and facilitation or an adjustment to the systems should be provided to enable inclusion of all skaters. For example, a skater who cannot travel, lacks the necessary funding and or support to compete at the event, has a medical condition that makes it unsafe or too challenging to compete at the event, may use the pre-recorded video entry instead. And for example, that's now built itself up so that this year we will be holding the World Virtual Inclusive Skating Championships in 2021, because we've built up such a popular system now that we've got lots of people from all over the world taking part in the event. And that the virtual events are going to continue on an ongoing basis. But even if we're holding a venue event and you want to take part and still turn up at the event, if you cannot reliably participate in the event but you still want to take part, then you can do the pre-recorded video entry, and we'll always include a virtual option with every event going forward. Inclusive skating includes the whole family and the carers too. So if there's only one member of the family group with a challenge, then the whole family group can participate together. And this helps the parents and carers to manage their care responsibilities appropriately. So general activities include the whole family and the carers. The unified event structure includes the family and associated carers in competition too, and it puts the community of the skater at the centre of all activities. If a skater does not have any family or friends, then try to find a volunteer who will become a buddy for the skater. And I've included that because I think it's really important. We try to ensure that everyone has got someone that is going to be their person at the event. And so regularly at the event, we've got people that are living independently, but they do have additional support needs. When they come to an inclusive skating event, we will then always seek to have a designated volunteer who will look after that particular skater so that no one is left on their own, and that they are drawn into the community and given support as well, so that the inclusive skating event becomes a special experience for them. And that picture, just if you're not actually aware of who that is, that's Billy Mayor's dad. And that was him taking part in the Scottish Inclusive Skating Championships, again in the unified event, because obviously he's got no additional need. One of the things that we do have for the adult skaters is we've got an age-related impairment compensation, so that once you get post, I think it's 30, we add on 1% for every age. So if you work at my age, you get quite a lot added on it as you get older, and boy, do you need it as you get older. So that does actually help to equalise things if we're actually just providing one unified result. With the adult competition, they keep people in age bands, but I think we would run out of too many competitions within inclusive skating if we were to do that. So instead, we've got the masters section for the over 30s, and we've got an age-related impairment compensation to equalise it across all of the adult skaters. And that could be added to their inclusive skating impairment compensation as well. So they could get a combination of their whole person impairment plus their age-related compensation as well, so that people can continue to participate even as they get older within inclusive skating. Any questions on that? Right. Now, we've actually done really, really well. We've done, have we done this? Did we cover that? Yeah. Make sure we didn't. We missed this out. Keep on doing that. Okay, let's just do this very briefly before we finish off. So this is the welcome policy, and this is taken at a live event. This was down at Lammas, and you can see all of the presents. We like giving everyone a little present when they take part in an inclusive skating event. I'm always going around trying to get funding and support for our skaters. So you'll have seen them wearing their inclusive skating gilets and jackets and little presents, and you can see the accreditation lanyards being given out and people being checked in, so that people have got a clear place of where to go when they come into the event. And you can see that skater there, that's her just picking up her lanyard when she's at the event. So, okay. So events and activities should have a clearly signposted registration desk for skaters and parents and carers. And this can be a hub of activity. So a quiet, welcome area can be made available too, if necessary. Because bear in mind, you might have some skaters that, you know, that they don't enjoy this sort of hub. It might be too noisy for them. So if you've got some people that are really compromised when it comes to noise or activity, make sure that you've also got a little quiet spot that you can actually take them to if it's too much for them. Before the event, skaters and associated persons can be given support to enter the event and access the systems. And I'm hoping that some of you volunteers might actually help with that, because a lot of our people are digitally compromised and can find that quite a challenge. So if you can volunteer to do any of those sorts of activities, that would be extremely welcome. And such people can be an identified contact for all activities. So we seek to ensure that there's a designated person to meet and greet new skaters and manage the induction process. And this requires a large number of trained volunteers to implement. An off-ice volunteer development programme is under development, and this safety course that you're doing right now is the most important component of the off-ice volunteer training programme. Okay. Any questions on that? Right. Okay, so we've actually done all those modules across the top. We've done the overview, the accreditation policy, the facilitation policy, the welcome policy, and the inclusion policy. So we've actually done a huge chunk of the actual course. This was the last one of this particular module. So we might just very briefly just do this before we finish off for today. Okay, so the Inclusive Skating Code of Conduct applies to all participants at all times. As more people are given access to the venue, they must adopt the highest possible standard of conduct and behaviour at all times. And able-bodied family members and carers should respect the needs of the whole community and should modify their behaviour to accommodate the needs of all the inclusive skaters, because, as I said, we seek to provide a calm environment for everyone at all times. It's a volunteer-led activity, so everyone's needs must be respected, including that of the volunteers, and the volunteers are there to support activities. We follow the I Coach Kids pledge and philosophy, and we encourage everyone else to follow it. So this is actually what the I Coach Kids philosophy actually requires. And I think this applies equally to people who are inclusive skaters, because we should also seek to respect their independence as well. So that would be the only modification that I would actually say when it's adults, is that you might need to slightly adjust it to allow for their independence. But nonetheless, most of the principles will apply. So we expect people to be child-centred, or as we would say, inclusive skater-centred. Be holistic. So make sure that you develop the skaters as people first and foremost, not only as athletes. You want to be aiming to develop all of the individual psychosocial skills and capabilities, not just the physical ones. So make sure that you actually look at the skater as an individual person. You're always looking at their best interest. Listen to what people have got to say and make sure that it's what they actually want and need, and it's not just about the adults. So make sure that you're always listening to the inclusive skater. You'll see very often if I'm running an activity, I'll often be speaking to the individuals and trying to find out what it is that they want and adapting things to them. And that's very much part of that communication and dialogue. If you've got a conversation going, then you can actually achieve that. The I Coach Kids Pledge is inclusive, so it caters for all abilities and motivations. Coaching is far from a one-size-fits-all, so get to know the skaters you coach and dare to coach them differently. If you find something is needed for an individual, make sure you adapt to make it fit that individual. Don't just try to have a standard template of one-size-fits-all. Make sure that you adapt things and you make adjustments to ensure that you achieve inclusion. Make it fun and safe. I think having fun is one of the most important things, and I try to make sure that that is something that's at the heart of all inclusive skating activities. Personally, I love the sound of laughter. It's the thing that I love the most. I live close to a school and I enjoy living close to a school because normally you're listening to the children in the playground and you can hear the laughter and all the fun. And I think it could be because I was brought up in a hotel and it was a very happy place to be. We had a very, very popular place. People, flocked in their droves to come to our hotels, and they still do. And I think it's because it's fun and it's welcoming. Children want to have fun too. And when they are feeling as if they're having fun and that they're safe, then it's much easier for everyone to learn. People will learn much better if they're feeling happy and they're feeling safe. So build positive relationships and enjoyable and caring climates that allow everyone to thrive and keep them coming back. I once had a friend who was an educational psychologist, and I said to her once, I said, what's the most important thing that you would have as your mantra? And she said, the most important thing is to encourage them enough that they will keep trying. And it's really true. If you give people enough encouragement and enough fun, then they will keep trying and they'll come back. And I think that's really important. Prioritise at all times the love for sport above learning the sport. So a very small proportion of kids will become elite athletes, yet all of them have got the potential to become healthy and active athletes. Creating that fantastic legacy is part of your job, and it's part of your job with inclusive skating. Although it's really important that some people will win medals, it's actually far more important that they're actually loving skating and enjoy taking part. So really do make sure that you're including absolutely everyone. We're not into talent identification with inclusive skating. What we're about is having a journey for absolutely everyone. So no matter what their additional needs and challenges, that they're able to take part within inclusive skating, reach their maximum potential, and then keep on participating no matter what age or stage that they're at, so that they're always able to be included within the sport. It's not about necessarily them going off to win the Olympics or the Paralympics. That's, a wee bonus. It's not what we're about. We're about them having fun and being included. Focus on foundational skills. So make sure that you're giving people the opportunity to develop their full health and well-being. So don't be too caught up that they can only do stuff that's happening on the ice. So for example, with Grant, we'll be very interested whether or not Grant's able to stretch his arm out, because we're building up his overall physicality. It's not just the fact that he can just spin on the ice with Lucy. It's important that he's also developing as an individual as well, so that his health and well-being is good. And so make sure that you give everyone essential motor skills and learn the basics of how to play, and use just general physical good learning skills to give everyone the best chance of success. And what you might find is that maybe an activity that you thought maybe wasn't so important, that might be the one that they become good at. So for example, someone that you thought was maybe going to go off to become a figure skater suddenly decides that in actual fact they like a bit of speed and they want to do speed skating. Inclusive skating includes speed skating, so that's absolutely fine. Let them do what they like. And if you've given them good foundational skills, then they'll be able to choose what they like doing the best. Encourage parents positively. Now, within the able-bodied, they often try to exclude the parents. We don't. Make sure that all the parents are encouraged to take part positively. They're the biggest resource at your disposal. All you've got to do is listen to Judy Murray and the importance of parents to realise how important that is. The parents want the best for their kids, and so do you. So partnership is the key word. You will never know what the parents can offer if you don't talk to them. So with inclusive skating, we really do expect you to speak to the parents, and in our case, also the carers, the people that are looking after the skaters on a day-to-day basis. Plan progressive programs. We're taking the skaters on a learning journey. We have to have a good idea of the destination point and develop goals, short, medium and long-term goals and plans that will help the skaters get there. It's not peak by Saturday, nor improving a session off the cuff. Failing to plan is planning to fail. So as coaches within inclusive skating in particular, we really encourage you to plan programs and not just have skaters turn up for a come and try session. What we really want with inclusive skating is that they've got an active training program and they've got coaches that are going to look after and develop these skaters on an ongoing basis so that they can achieve short, medium and long-term goals. And it's not a one-day wonder. Okay, and to do that planning process means that you've actually got to plan. So the coach is really crucial in all of this process. Use different methods to enhance learning. Learning is a complex process and it doesn't happen overnight. Different coaching and teaching strategies can serve different purposes at different stages of learning and development, complement each other and help us achieve the desired results. So make sure that you try different things. Some people are visual learners, some people are physical learners. So make sure that you work out how that skater learns and what they need to do to learn. So try different things and also have a conversation with them and try to find out about them so that you make sure that the strategies that you employ as a coach or as a volunteer will help that particular skater. And for example, if they've not got a good auditory understanding, for example, you might find that with someone with behavioural problems, then maybe you want to use maybe a picture, you know, for your safety briefing for them. You might not want to do it through auditory because maybe they don't listen very well. So it's really important that you really understand both the challenge that the skater has and also what learning methods suit them best. So use competition also in a developmental way. There's nothing wrong with competition. It's great fun. It gives you something to aspire to. And importantly, with inclusive skating, it gets us all together and we have a lot of fun. So when the format and the atmosphere around competition is built around the developmental stage of the kids, which it does with inclusive skating, because no matter what stage you're at, you get included, and it's considerate of their needs, competition is an amazing motivator and a lot of fun. A win at all cost mentality can really spoil the party though. So we really encourage people to not regard competition as the end goal and nothing else matters. Use it developmentally. And we've got things like world rankings and personal best scores so that you've always got something to achieve. Okay, now down there is the code of conduct. Now you can have a look at that yourself separately, but that is a component part of the course. I'm not going to go through it today. Is there any questions about that? Right. Big hint, there is a question on the iCoach pledge in the exam at the end. So it's a really good idea. Now that's as far as we're going to go today.